Chapter 13. Atlantis. The human beings of Atlantis reached a very high degree in their civilization, similar to that of the Lemurians. During that time, the earth was enveloped by a thick mist, and the human beings were breathing through galls. The Lemurian flying ships and boats propelled with atomic energy were also known in Atlantis. In the beginning of this civilization, sexual relations were only performed with the objective of engendering bodies for the reincarnating souls. The proper day and hour was chosen by the angels, and for this reason childbearing was painless. The human being was living in a paradisiacal state, yet Lucifer and the Lucifers, who are the black magicians from the lunar period, tempted the human being, and they mislead him towards the black path. The serpent is the sexual force, and not simply material attraction, as supposed by the Rosicrucians in their monographs of 9th degree. The sexual force has two poles, positive and negative. The positive is the serpent of bronze, which was healing the Israelites in the wilderness. The negative is the tempting serpent of Eden. The work of the Lucifers was a work of black magic. They awoke the passionate fire of humanity, with the only purpose of creating proselytes for the Black Lodge, since every demon is a fornicator. The cephalic rachis liquid and the semen are the poles of the sexual energy. The angel has the two poles upwards, towards his head. The common and current human beings and the demons have one pole upward and the other downward. They form the brain with one pole, and they fornicate with the other pole. The kundalini of the angel goes upwards, yet the demon's kundardaguator goes downwards. Jehovah prohibited fornication to man, yet Lucifer seduced him towards it. And Jehovah Elohim commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Genesis 2:16-17. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:4-5. The commandment given by Jehovah is white magic. The commandment given by Lucifer is black magic. When the human being delivered himself to the pleasures of the coitus, he lost his occult powers. Thus, the words of Jehovah were accomplished when he said, In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Genesis 3:19. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow, and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Genesis 3:16. The violation of any law always brings pain. Childbearing was painless for the women in Lemuria, because the child was engendered in the very hour, minute, and second which the cosmic laws were favoring for reproduction. Thus, the violation of this law brought pain in childbirth. Nonetheless, in this day and age there is still a remedy for those who resolve to follow the Gnostic matrimony. The Gnostic matrimony returns the human being to paradise. In the Gnostic Church, the Gnostic matrimonies receive the exact day, hour, and minute in which they have to engender their children. Thus, there is no pain in childbirth. What is important is to know how to travel in astral body, in order to visit the Gnostic temple. I will give these clues later on. The Lemurians did not know death. They knew the exact date and hour of their disincarnation, and so they were digging their own tombs. They were abandoning their own body by will and with a smile on their lips. They also never disappeared from the sight of their relatives because they were clairvoyant. They kept coexisting with the dead because death was simply a passing into a different state. But when the human being lost his powers because of the coitus, then he knew death. Chapter 14. Black Magic of the Atlanteans. The black magicians of the school of Sodom say that black magic does not exist, that it is only a superstition. They say that evil and hateful thoughts, which are emitted by evil minds, are disintegrated since the cosmic is pure goodness. Therefore, it cannot serve as an instrument for the forces of evil. The goal of the above noted statement of the black magicians from the school of Sodom is to justify their tenebrous teachings, in order to give them the false appearance of being pure white magic. The cosmic is the whole infinite, and in the cosmos there are many things. As above, so below. If a thought which is emitted by an evil one is disintegrated at once, why then is not a bullet disintegrated in the atmosphere? Why does the cosmic serve as an instrument for a bullet, which is going to kill a human being, who might be an elder or a child? If that concept of the black magicians from the school of Sodom would be true, then the bullet should disintegrate itself at once. Possibly they would argue by saying to me that the bullet is a material body, and a thought is not. Yet, this is also not a good explanation, because thought is also matter. Nothing can exist, not even God, without the help of matter. Moreover, every atom is septuple in its constitution. The bullet used as an example is a compound of physical, ethereal, astral, mental, causal, conscientious, and divine atoms. In other words, the bullet is a nucleus of atomic consciousness, which is charged with the waves of hatred from the one who shot it. Why then is the bullet not disintegrated? Why does the cosmic serve as an instrument for the bullet? Why does the cosmic serve as an instrument for the destructive waves of the atomic bomb? Could it be conceivable that the mental waves are inferior to the radioactive waves of the atoms of uranium? Hence, that concept of the black magicians from the school of Sodom serves them only in order to conceal their crimes and to cheat naive people. The only thing they want is to justify themselves as white magicians. Do not covet powers, beloved reader. Powers are born as fruits of our intimate, when our soul has been purified. The mental force that we stubbornly use in order to move a piece of paper would be better used in order to dominate our carnal passion, in order to end hatred, in order to dominate our language, in order to defeat selfishness, envy, etc. Let us purify ourselves, since powers will be granted to us through successive purifications. Powers are flowers of the soul and fruits of the intimate. The powers of a Mahatma are the fruit of millenary purifications. The Gnostic disciple receives distinct powers from the White Lodge through the initiatic ordeals. These powers are acquired by the soul, and the intimate seizes them, because the intimate is the real human within ourselves. For instance, when the Gnostic wishes a distant friend to come near to him, then he begs his intimate as follows: "My Father, I beg you to bring near to me, name the person, but not as I will, but as you will." If his intimate considers that his petition is just, then the intimate performs the miracle, that is to say, he performs a work of theurgy, and the distant friend arrives. Yet, if the intimate considers that the petition is unjust, then the intimate doest not perform the petition of his soul. This is pure white magic. The black magician proceeds to use his so-called asuncion, or willpower, without taking the will of his intimate into account. "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven" is what the Gnostic says, because the Gnostic only performs the will of his intimate on earth as it is in heaven, in other words, in the superior planes of consciousness. The Gnostic places all of his longings in the hands of his intimate. We prepare our pituitary and pineal glands for clairvoyance by dominating anger and acquiring serenity. We prepare ourselves for the awakening of the inner ear when we always utter words of love and truth. Sexual magic, daily vocalization, and incessant purification take us towards the summits of the high initiation. To not covet powers does not signify that we, the Gnostics, take on a passive attitude, as do the Theosophists. We have to prepare ourselves when practicing sexual magic, when vocalizing, and when we expel all of the rubbish from ourselves. The Gnostics transmute their sexual secretions and patiently await, in order to be worthy of receiving their occult powers, that sprout as flowers of the soul, when they have already purified themselves. The Gnostics do not covet powers, on the contrary, they prepare themselves in order to acquire them. The preparation of the Gnostic is to purify himself and to practice sexual magic daily. In their temples, the black magicians have established similar ordeals to those of the white magicians. In order to be accepted as candidates for their initiation, the likely candidates are allowed to receive insults, grumbles, to listen to humiliations, and to even receive blows to their person whilst in their festivities. In the 5th monograph of the 9th black degree of the School of Sodom, the disciple receives a parchment after passing the 4 ordeals of earth, water, fire, and air within a temple of black magic. The parchment states the following: "Peace, greetings from the master of the temple. By decree of the high priest, and by all of the guardians who have served and veiled over you, as proof of your perseverance, faith, and desire, and in accordance with what has been manifested in the external chambers, you are allowed to enter into the following sanctum. You will await to be prepared in order to be admitted into the Holy of Holies after 3 days of sanctification and purification. Your name will be 777, your letter will be R, your salutation will be Aum, your book will be the one with the letter M, your jewel will be the green jasper, which is in the shape of a scarab, and your hour will be 9. Rest with patience and await the hour, the number, and the sign. This is pure and legitimate black magic. These ordeals are passed by the disciple in the astral plane within a temple of black magic. In the White Lodge, when the Gnostic asks the masters in the astral plane for the 4 ordeals of earth, fire, water, and air, then these ordeals are set by the masters one after the other, as described in our book The Perfect Matrimony, or the door entering into initiation. These ordeals are always occurring with the interruption of many days between each one, and the next ordeal is given only if the student has been triumphant in the previous one. Each triumph of the disciple is celebrated in the children's hall, with ineffable music and feasts. Each one of the 4 ordeals has its special celebration. The children's hall is so named because the disciple is received by the masters who have taken on the shape of children, in order to tell him, "Except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 18:3. So, there is nothing regarding a letter R, nothing about 777, nothing about jasper jewels, nothing about hours and signs, since all of these are just pure black magic from Atlantis. In the White Lodge, the only thing, which is placed on the Gnostic disciple, is the small cape of a Chela neophyte, which he has to ask for. After having passed the ordeal of air, the black magician receives a jewel with 2 intertwined rings, which is what becomes the sign of his triumph. The white magician receives a symbolic ring, which represents the ray to which he belongs. To the ring of the black magician reminds him that he was hung from 2 rings over an abyss. The masters of the black temple dress in white tunics. The veiled prophets wear black veils, the stole-bearers wear gray-colored stoles, the scribes were blue, the astrologers were blue and white, the mystics were yellow, and the doctors were a reddish-gray-colored stole. The temple remains in obscurity. The disciple of 9th black degree is admonished with the following words: "The living soul, who traverses this horrendous path in loneliness, without vacillations or shyness, will be illuminated by the glorious mysteries, after the purifications by earth, fire, water, and air." Afterwards, the black disciple advances towards the guardians of death. In the ordeal of fire, a guardian says to the black disciple the following: "If you wish to arrive next to the master, you must pass through this door. In order to reach this door, you must pass through this hail. In order to pass through this hail, you must walk over these beams of fire. So come if you search for the master." Then the disciple says, "Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead." So, filled with courage, he traverses through the fire. In the ordeal of water, a black guardian says, "If you want to see the master, and to enter into the holy temple, you must reach that door and pass through it, and in order to pass that door, you must pass through the lake." Everything here described between quotations refers to the 9th black degree of the fraternity from the School of Sodom. Everything is pure and legitimate black magic. The disciples of the White Lodge, as we have already stated, only celebrate their festivity in the children's hall, after having become triumphant. The 4 ordeals within the White Lodge are in order to examine the white disciple's morals. For instance, in the ordeal of fire, the disciple is attacked by crowds of enemies who insult him. Instead of returning insults, the disciple throws love towards his enemies. This is how he triumphs in this ordeal, when with serenity, he passes through the fire without becoming burned. As we see in this ordeal of fire, there is the need to kiss the executioner's whip in order to triumph. Yet, in the ordeal of fire for the black magician, the only requirement is to pass through the fire, since moral preparation does not have the least bit of importance for the black magician. The ordeal of water for the Gnostic in the White Lodge is given with the only purpose of knowing what level has the disciple's altruism and philanthropy reached. The White Lodge's ordeal of air is only given with the purpose of knowing the disciple's capacity for resistance against great adversities, and for detachment from material things. It is logical that a disciple who commits suicide because of a loss of fortune cannot pass through the ordeal of air. By simply not being capable of morally resisting a failure, it is clear that one does not pass the ordeal of air. Whosoever succumbs to the grave inconveniences of life fails in the ordeal of earth. There are many persons who have passed these ordeals within the very struggle of life, within the daily battle of obtaining their daily bread. Sometimes in life there have been human beings who have traced a great plan for the benefit of humanity, and they have accomplished it with exact fullness, in spite of all misfortunes, sufferings and tears. These people have passed the 4 ordeals in the body of flesh and bones. Therefore, the 4 ordeals of earth, fire, water, and air are presented simply for the moral examination of the disciple. All of our defects and moral faults are precisely the negative aspect of the 4 elements of nature, and we have to convert ourselves into kings and queens of it. In the White Lodge, the 4 ordeals are accompanied by a verbal test, in order to know what level of purification the disciple has reached. All of these ordeals occur in the astral plane. The prepared disciple, that is to say, the disciple who has spiritual maturity, brings the memory of all of this to the physical plane, just as if he would have had a dream. On the other hand, what only matters in the Black Lodge is to have the courage of a brutal beast in order to become triumphant in the ordeals. The 6th monograph from the 9th Black degree describes to us how their dreadful disciples, after having triumphantly passed their 4 ordeals, have the right to receive, they say, the sacred initiation. Let us see the following paragraph from the 3rd page of the 6th monograph of the 9th Black degree. Now then, in this way I knew that 2 intertwined rings must be my sign, therefore, 2 intertwined circles similar to 2 links of a chain are my sign, and also these will be your sign in this initiation. As soon as this was understood by me, they asked me to sign my name, and to leave the digital mark of my thumb over a sheet of special paper, which was attached to a piece of wood, that also was attached to other pieces. Then after, they commanded me to go towards the door, to push a small sliding seal, and give my letter and number. The whole of this seems to be like a scene in a police office, but never of a temple of white initiation. No one signs his personal name within any temple of white initiation, neither is anyone registered, because in the White Lodges, and in the karmic records, the human being is depicted with the name of his intimate, and never with profane names. Many of the Black students lose their profane name when they enroll in their spiritual universities. Then, when they conquer their anagaric-hood, they are assigned with a capricious name as a substitution of their own profane name. As a reward for their success while forming a chain, they exclaim in their sanctum, I. This is an action of thanksgiving for these left-hand adepts. The disciple's conductor wears a tunic and hood of a black color, because he is an authentic black magician. Among the masters of the White Lodge, not one wears a black hood. The master Zanoni, white master, dresses in a black tunic, and wears a distinguished mantle of the same color, but never a black hood. This is because the black hood is only for black magicians. Thus, having again reached the bottom of the temple, I am led towards the center of the temple. Then, an official places a great cross over my head while I kneel, and 3 bell strokes resound in some other part of the temple. From the east of the temple, a master with a purple tunic who carries a great Egyptian cross approaches me. He holds this cross over my head instead of the other cross, while other officials who are standing next to me say, "Under the cross of immortality and eternal life, you are blessed." Within the halls of the authentic white Gnostic initiation, a master never wears a purple or red tunic, since these colors are only used by the hierarchies of the Black Lodge. In the white initiation, the disciple throws upon his shoulders an enormous and heavy cross of wood. This signifies that the disciple has already started his own Via Crucis through the 9 arcades. The weight of the cross differs very much, as this weight depends upon the karma of each person. Sometimes the disciple cannot bear the weight of his cross, then the Cyrenean has to help him. The vowels EU grants the disciple the power of bearing his cross when it is very heavy. Thus, the cross over the shoulders is white magic. Yet, the cross over the head is black magic. Christ did not bear his cross over his head, but over his shoulders. The cross symbolizes matter. Hence, to bear the cross over the head signifies to resolve oneself to live under matter, under the world. This is why the black magician says, "Under the cross of immortality and eternal life, you are blessed." The white magician says, "Over the cross I am." The cross over the head is carried by the pontiffs on their mitres. No white magician carries the cross over his head, but over his shoulders, as was demonstrated by the divine Redeemer. Thus we, the Gnostics, are not under the cross, but over the cross. The Gnostic has to bide a certain figure in the first initiation. Before entering into this first initiation, he has already received the authentic lost word, which has never been written. The verbal tests are very strict in order to receive the initiation. The black magician does not care for morality. Once the chela, white neophyte, triumphantly passes the white initiation, a celebration occurs. In the black ceremony, the disciple receives from a black magician, who is dressed in yellow, a series of teachings that are utilized in order to become invisible and to make others invisible. We will talk about this in the next chapter, Nirvana. As we have already stated, all of these teachings came from Atlantis. In Atlantis, the human beings were utilizing the sexual forces in order to inflict grave damage. This is how Orhuarpa, a black magician, was forming monsters with his mind, that later he physically materialized. He fed them blood to keep them alive, and he was casting these monsters upon his defenseless victims whenever he wished to do so. The Atlantean humanity was clairvoyant, and they marvelously managed to handle the cosmic forces. A very important sanctuary existed in that epoch. This sanctuary was named the Sanctuary of Vulcan. The guardians of this sanctuary had Ahriman, another black magician, and his legions under their control, so these black magicians could not freely work on our planet. The atoms of Ahriman eventually damaged the clairvoyance of the human being. This is how our humanity remains enslaved by the illusion of this physical world. Nevertheless, there was in Atlantis a great college of initiates. When the black magicians were attempting damage against them, then the evil ones were killed by the sword of justice. The lords of Mercury gave the mind to the human being in order for him to think, and not for him to use it for destructive purposes, as did Orhuarpa. When Orhuarpa saw that people were worshipping him as a god, he armed a powerful army, and marched against Tallinn, the city of the 7 gates of massive gold, where the white magicians from Atlantis reigned. During the day, Orhuarpa was fighting dressed in steel, with shield, helmet, casque and sword. Yet, during the night, he was unleashing his beasts with his witchcraft. They were in the form of wolves, and they were destroying his enemies. This is how he captured Tallinn, the city with the 7 gates of massive gold. He became emperor of Atlantis, thus, establishing the cult of the tenebrous sun. This is how events occurred then. The Master Mona reincarnated. He reunited an army of soldiers and marched against Orhuarpa. Orhuarpa cast his ferocious beasts against the Master Mona, but the Master was dissolving them with his luminous powers. Master Moria, with the edge of his sword, captured Tallinn, the city with the 7 gates of massive gold, and all of the soldiers of Orhuarpa fell under the sword of the forces of light. When Orhuarpa saw that he had lost, he enclosed himself within a tower and died burning in it, because Master Mona's soldiers set fire to that tower. Unfortunately, events did not end here. Orhuarpa immediately reincarnated again, and when he was old enough, he reunited his army of warriors and sorcerers and marched against Tallinn, but he could not capture the city again. So he established his own throne against the other throne. Then the 4 thrones, deities, said to the white emperor Noenra, "Noah, leave from this land, and pass to the Gobi Desert, where you will find dry land, because God will sink this land." Noah obeyed and departed with all his people towards the Gobi Desert. The people of Noenra were the primitive Semite tribes who were following the path of white magic. Thus, Orhuarpa remained chief and lord of Atlantis. Sometime after the departure of the people of Israel, certain dangerous igneous manifestations started to appear in Atlantis. This was because the use of the sexual forces, when utilized for black magic, made the fire of the dormant volcanoes enter into activity. The sexual forces have an intimate relationship with all the forces of nature, because the sexual forces reside not only in our sexual organs, but also in all of our cells and, moreover, within each atom of the cosmos. The sexual force is the cause of electricity. It is logical then that the dormant volcanoes would enter into activity, since the volcanoes were intimately related with the black magicians by means of the sexual energy. During great earthquakes, Atlantis sank with all of its black magicians into the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. All of the native tribes from the continent of America are Atlantean remnants. These tribes preserved many practices of black magic, which were derived from the Atlanteans. In America, there are some who make dolls with wax and then bury them with pins. This is how they empower their imagination and concentrate their minds on their victims. There are others who utilize the sexual forces for destructive purposes. The whole of this originated in Atlantis. The Arhuacos Indians, from the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, Colombia, burned a whole town named Tabuya by utilizing the elementals of fire, which they call animes. I met a humble old woman in the small town of Santa Cruz de Mora, state of Merida, who made marvels with the elementals of nature. When she was young, she married an Indian. Her husband took her to his tribe into the jungle. She tells many strange things about this tribe. She says that during the day, the Indians abandon their homes, and during the night all of them arrive with the shape of animals, yet, when they are within their huts, they take the human shape again. A certain day her husband took leave from her, and said that he was going to die in the jungle, since these Indians go into the jungle in order to die. He gave her an amulet and said, "I deliver this keepsake to you, so you can ask to it whatever you wish, when you are needy." This is how the old woman made marvels in the town of Santa Cruz. She asked this amulet whatever she wished for. Money, wine, jewels, liquors, perfumes, etc., etc. were coming to her as if by magic. People who were robbed did nothing more but consult her. At once she was asking the amulet for the robbed object. Then, the object was carried by invisible hands and arrived into her hands, and so everybody was recovering their lost things. Unfortunately, these marvels ended for the old woman when she had the weakness of confessing this to a priest, who took this marvelous talisman away from her. The performance of these marvels are nothing fantastical or rare, since they are simply made with the elementals of nature. The book by Mr. Franz Hartmann entitled The Elementals widely refers to these things. The whole of this knowledge comes from Atlantis. The elementals serve for good as well as for evil. The Atlanteans utilized the elementals for evil. Chapter 15. Nirvana. From the Gobi Desert, the Israelite tribes emigrated to the west in order to form the Aryan root race. This is represented in the book of Exodus, in the story of the emigration of Israel, when they were coming out from the land of Egypt towards the promised land. Enormous caravans of human beings, who were commanded by the masters of major mysteries, came away from the drowning Atlantis towards the Gobi Desert. Afterwards, they emigrated to the west in order to cross themselves with some Western races, in order to form our present Aryan root race. The captains of the biblical Exodus were the same masters of major mysteries. They were profoundly venerated by humanity, therefore no one dared to disobey their sacred commands. Moses remained 40 years in the wilderness, that is to say, the primeval Israelites remained 40 years in the wilderness. They built the Ark of Alliance, they established the mysteries of Levi, and they worshipped Jehovah. The mysteries of the 7 sanctuaries emigrated towards the west. Under the light of these sanctuaries is how the Magus Persia, the Riches India, Chaldea, Egypt, Hellenic Greece, etc., all flourished. This occult wisdom illuminated Solon, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Buddha, etc. The most powerful civilizations from the past flourished under the light of the sacred mysteries. Nonetheless, the human being was developing the intellect, and it withdrew him from the internal worlds. When the human being lost his clairvoyance, then he knew fear. Fear did not exist in the past, because the human being was contemplating the action of the gods, and he was seeing the unraveling of all things. The human being removed himself from the great light, now he has to return into the great light. The Buddhists tell us that when the human being is liberated from the wheel of birth and death, then he enters into the ineffable joy of nirvana. We, the Gnostics, know that Christ is a Nirmanakya, a being who renounced nirvana, in order to come to save this humanity. The Book of the Dead says, I am the sacred crocodile Sebek. I am the flame with 3 wicks, and my wicks are immortal. I enter the region of Sikkim. I enter into the region of the flames which have defeated my adversaries. This region of Sikkim, the region of the flames, is the ineffable joy of nirvana. A Dayan Chohan is one who has already abandoned the 4 bodies of sin, which are the physical, astral, mental, and causal bodies. A Dayan Chohan only acts with his diamond soul. He has already liberated himself from Maya, illusion, thus, he lives happily in nirvana. The sacred crocodile is the intimate. The intimate is the flame with 3 immortal wicks. These 3 wicks are the intimate's diamond soul, his igneous mind, and Atman, his own spiritual body. Nirvana is a region of nature where the ineffable happiness of the fire reigns. The nirvanic plane has 7 subplanes. A resplendent hail exists in each one of these 7 subplanes of nirvanic matter, where the Nirmanakas study their mysteries. This is why they call their subplanes halls, and not merely subplanes as the Theosophists do. The Nirvanis say, we are in the first hall of nirvana, or in the second hail of nirvana, or in the third, or in the 4th, or 5th, or 6th, or in the 7th hail of nirvana. To describe the ineffable joy of nirvana is impossible. There, the music of the spheres reigns, and the soul is enchanted within a state of bliss, which is impossible to describe with words. The inhabitants of the superior hail of nirvana use diamond tunics, and they carry mantles of distinction over their heads, which fall to their feet. We can visit nirvana with our astral body. The yogis from India, while in the state of samadhi, visit nirvana with their mental body or causal body. However, to pretend to visit nirvana with black magic procedures is the breaking point of madness. The Gnostic knows how to enter into nirvana by utilizing the powers of his intimate. When the Gnostic wants to visit nirvana, he does the following. First, he leaves his physical body and departs in his astral body. Second, when he is already out of his physical body, then he prays to his intimate as follows. Father of mine, take me to nirvana. Then, the intimate transports the soul of the Gnostic towards the ineffable joys of nirvana. The Gnostic procedure in order to depart in the astral body is very simple. The Gnostic takes advantage of the natural state of transition between vigil and dream in order to leave his physical body. This is done with much naturalness, as when one is walking out of his home. The individual simply pronounces the mantra Rusty, and in the moment when he is getting drowsy, he gets out of his bed, not with the mind, nor the imagination, but as if he is really doing it with his body of flesh and bones. Hence, the physical body remains within the bed. The mantra is pronounced many times. The Gnostics know very well that they must always save their sexual force, because the Kundalini awakens with the sexual force. The mantra Ra helps in the awakening of the Kundalini, but it is necessary to know how. This is ignored by the black magicians of the school of Sodom. These black magicians believe that by pronouncing Rama, while standing on their feet every morning, and while taking various inhalations of air, they will purify themselves. What they only demonstrate with this is their complete ignorance regarding the wisdom of the Egyptians. We, the ancient Egyptians, pronounce the mantra Ra while in the Egyptian position, which is as follows. Our knees are on the ground, the palms of our hands are on the ground and touching each other by the thumbs. Then, our head rests upon the back of our hands. Already stated, in the previous chapter, in the black ceremony, the ancient black magicians, while enveloped within a cloud, were physically invisible and were transporting themselves to wherever they wished. Christ, the divine Rabbi of Galilee, taught us the secret in order to travel with the physical body within the astral plane. Let us see verses 24 to 32 of the 14th chapter of Matthew. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spoke unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter got down out of the ship, he walked on the water, to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand, and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. This is the Gnostic secret in order to enter within the astral plane, with the body of flesh and bones. Peter walked upon the waters because his physical body, by means of the force of faith, submerged itself within the astral plane. In the moment when he doubted, he went out of the astral plane, and he was close to sinking. The forces of the astral plane were holding Peter when he was upon the waters. Therefore, the astral plane was the force which was holding Christ when he was upon the waters. When we, the Gnostics, want to go to the astral plane with the body of flesh and bones, then we utilize the clue which the Master taught us. We proceed in the following way, in the precise moment, when we awake from our natural sleep, without giving time to any analysis, doubt or vacillation, and filled with a very intense faith, we get up from our bed, we leave our room, then we float within the atmosphere. Only our faith is what holds us while performing this. Consequently, any analysis, doubt or vacillation damages the experiment. We can also take advantage of the instant in which we are getting sleepy, or simply, in the instant in which the mind is in a profound repose, as a tranquil lake. The physical body floats simply by means of faith. We abandon the force of gravity and the physical plane. So we penetrate with our physical body into the astral plane, where the laws of levitation reign. Our disciples also know how to walk upon the waters in the same way as our Master did. Therefore, we are authentic Christians. The black magicians from the school of Sodom also utilized the procedure of the cloud in order to envelop themselves within it and become invisible. They do not forget about mimicry with this, since if they are within a jungle, they have to make the cloud green. If they are within a room of white walls, they have to make the cloud white. In this way they will become invisible. We, the white magicians, utilize the power of our intimate in order to become invisible, yet this power is delivered to us only when we have deserved it. The black magicians from the school of Sodom believe that with their black experiments they can penetrate into nirvana, yet they are mistaken. They penetrate into the astral plane, but not into nirvana. We, the Gnostics, can visit nirvana even with our body of flesh and bones. Obviously, modern theosophists will laugh at us because they know not about these things. The unique thing that they have in their heads is an arsenal of theories. But in practicality, they are nothing else but eunuchs of understanding, morbid mystics, and fornicating. Sybarites. I still remember a theosophist who was a member of a black lodge. How terrified he flew away from a park in Cartagena, South America, when I told him that he was consciously working in the astral plane. This is the breaking point of negativity from theosophists. They horrify themselves simply with thinking in awakening the consciousness. They are only interested in having their heads filled with cockroaches, and in living their life asleep. Nevertheless, they say that someday they think they will enter nirvana. Foolish boasters of wisdom, know that only those who have already passed through the high initiation, only those who have given their last drop of blood for this humanity will enter into nirvana. All men long for the high initiation, yet they can only reach the altar of the high initiation with the virile member in the state of erection. Explanation in next chapter. Therefore, the Gnostic always lives heroically, always triumphant, and always a rebel, like the heroes of Rabelais, who knew nothing of weakness. The Gnostics yearn for nirvana, but they know very well that they carry nirvana within their sexual glands. Thus, they want to self-realize it within themselves, by means of courage. The elixir of long life. The Master Zanoni acquired his Chaldean initiation in very remote ages. As a result, he preserved his youthfulness for thousands of years. Megner, who was Zanoni's comrade, also lived through entire ages. These masters were invincible. Death could not do anything against them. They were citizens of an already disappeared ancient nation, Chaldea. What was their secret? What was their power? When arriving to the present chapter of this book, many uneducated surgeons of occult medicine will look at us with condemnation. With compassionate gestures they will mock the elixir of long life, and will consider these teachings senseless, since they feel they are something impossible for them. People have never comprehended, neither have they wanted to admit that the elixir of long life, the philosophical stone, and the clue of perpetual movement are found within the male testicles and within the female uterus. We have already said, and we will not tire of repeating, that the initiation is life itself, intensively lived, and that the human being's redemption exclusively lies in the sexual act. When our book The Perfect Matrimony started to circulate, then, as we had expected, many critics emerged who qualified us as pornographic. This was because the book was written in a simple language, which was at the reach of everyone's comprehension, and also because the clue of sexual magic was given. Nonetheless, we know that for the pure ones, everything is pure, yet, for the impure ones, everything is impure. This is how the boasters of wisdom, the sick mystics, who through their morbid lucubration, which make them believe that they are supertranscended, came to qualify us as materialists. Such individuals totally ignore that nothing can exist, not even God, without the help of matter. Some old rascals, filled with decrepitude and consumed by the passionate coitus, and some sanctimonious, sexually unsatisfied old women threw the book away horrified, and qualified it as scandalous and pornographic. This is because humanity does not love good but only evil. There were also some hallucinated mystics who pleaded in favor of an absurd type of chastity, which some religious sects preach, but do not practice. They ignore that nature is in rebellion against that harmful abstinence, which causes nocturnal pollutions, and the decalcification of the organism through the urethra. Sickness is the consequence. Men were made for women and women for men, because nature is wise in its designs. What man and woman have to learn is to enjoy themselves without hurting each other, and the answer for this is sexual magic. During the act of love, the Gnostic couple transmutes their semen into atomic energy by restraining the sexual act. This energy then rises upwards towards their head through certain spermatic canals. This is how the human being is converted into a god. This is not understood, cannot be understood, neither can it be explained by the pseudo-apostles of modern medicine, simply because they do not know the anatomy of the 7 bodies of the human being. They do not know about the occult chemistry, or the ultrabiology of the interior organisms of the human being, which are the fundamental base of the hormonal life, and of the endocrine glands. The Hindus gave the name Ida and Pingla to the spermatic canals through which the sexual energy internally rises towards the head. These are nervous cords, which are related with the vagus and sympathetic systems. These cords are entwined along the spinal column in the symbolic shape represented by the caduceus of Mercury. The human organism has its canals for the spilling of the semen. However, it also possesses seminal canals through which the semen, when transformed into energy, rises from the seminal glands upwards towards the head. This is because the mass, semen, is always transformed into energy, as was already proven by the wise and great Einstein. This process is what we call transmutation. These ascending spermatic canals were in use by human beings in very ancient epochs. The doctors of medicine among the Indians of the Sierra Nevada from Santa Marta, Colombia, are still utilizing these canals, ever since very ancient times. This is why they reach a very old age, maintaining a very lucid understanding, black hair, and intact dentures. Among these Indians, we frequently see their children reach the octogenarian and centenarian ages, while in our present civilization, the human being is already in decrepitude by the age of 70. There exist thousands of evidences in order to make the civilized and scientific person to think upon this particular matter. For example, an infant whose sexual energy has not yet been collected in his gonads has this energy latent in his entire organism. This is why if this infant is wounded, his body will heal more rapidly than the body of an adult, because the adult has been wasting his sexual forces since puberty. Moreover, the adult does not know how to handle his sexual energies as in the case of the infant. Great is the error which the youth commit, and also which their parents commit, when they allow their children to squander the sexual force in pleasures and disgusting habits. They need to be taught that the vital principle resides within this great force. It is true, as official science states, that sex is a biological function. Yet, the Decalogue teaches us with its 6th commandment that we must not squander the sexual force, because this force only accomplishes a constructive or creative function. Therefore, the liberty, which the parents give to their children, in order for them to freely fulfill their biological functions, is not lacking of being a crime committed against the youth. Sexual magic has the following advantages. 1. Husband and wife continue loving each other for life with growing intensity, as if they were boyfriend and girlfriend. 2. It does not fill the spouse's lives with children. 3. Woman rejuvenates. She turns more beautiful and attractive every day, because she is daily charged with powerful forces, thanks to her husband. 4. Aged man rejuvenates and does not ever get old, because life is given to him through their creative forces. Thus, luck and happiness surround them everywhere. 5. The sense of clairvoyance is awakened in both, and so the veil of the invisible worlds is disclosed before their sight. 6. The sacred fire of the Holy Spirit illuminates them internally. 7. They unite themselves with their own intimate, internal God. Thus, they convert themselves into king and queen of creation, with powers over the 4 elements of nature, which are earth, water, air, and fire. 8. They acquire the elixir of long life, which resides in the Kundalini. 9. Death will be no more. All of this is a fact, in spite of the doctors, who are consecrated by the materialistic university. Heaven is taken by assault, because heaven is for the courageous ones. The Gnostics, protected with their character shield of steel, grasp their sword of will, and as terrific warriors they hurl themselves into battle, in order to take heaven by assault. We, the Gnostics, are human beings of great tempests, and within the explosion of thunder, we only understand the language of majesty. When the warrior is close to the initiation, then he can laugh at death with a guffaw that can shake all of the caverns of the earth. Then he can have the right to the elixir of long life, which is a potable gold, and a liquid, flexible and malleable glass. He asks the lords of karma for additional years of life in order to pay his debts. This is how death and resurrection are achieved in his present incarnation, and how he is united with his intimate. Then, when his own karma is paid, he convokes the lords of karma, in order to declare to them that he has resolved to remain in this world in order to work for humanity. Therefore, he remains with his physical body forever, till the end of all centuries. The masters Kuthumi, Moria, Saint Germain, etc., have physical bodies, which have existed for thousands of years. All of them have an indescribable age. What would a master of major mysteries do if he had to constantly change his physical body? The founder of the College of Initiates is a Mahaguru, who will remain with us until the last initiate has reached his rank. The author of the Dayspring of Youth tells us that in Egypt there exist 2 masters, who have a really indescribable age. He states that one of them is mentioned within very ancient religious scriptures. A master can preserve his physical body for millions of years, because he possesses the elixir of long life, which resides in the Kundalini. The master keeps engendering his own body daily, by means of his Kundalini. Thus, the cells of the body of a master never wither, because the fire of the Kundalini does not allow them to do so. The Kundalini is then the elixir of long life. This fire is the potable gold of ancient alchemists. The Kundalini is the tree of life, which the book of Genesis refers to in the following verses. And of the ground made Jehovah Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2:9. The tree of life is the Kundalini, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the semen. Both trees are from the garden of God. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison, that is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good, there is bdellium and the onyx stone. The land of Havilah is our own physical body, and the gold of this land is the solar atoms from our seminal system, that is to say, the semen's potable gold. And the name of the second river is Gihon, the same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. This second river is the cephalorheic liquid, which is the other pole of our seminal system. With it we encompass the whole land of Ethiopia, that is to say, the whole of our head and throat, since we form the brain and throat with the cephalorheic liquid. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, that is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Genesis 2:10-14. The river which goes toward the east of Assyria and the river Euphrates are the two poles of the woman's seminal system. Therefore, the woman is towards the east of us, because she is the door of paradise, and this door is always towards the east. Eden is sex itself. Thus, the tree of life is within Eden itself. The great Hierophant Eliphas Levi said that the great magical arcanum is the tree of life, and that at the foot of this tree is the source of the four mysterious rivers of Eden. Yet, he fearfully says in a moment of consternation, here I must pause, and I fear that already I have said too much. This is the formidable, unutterable secret which no initiate has ever dared to reveal. This is the formidable secret of the great arcanum. The four rivers of Eden are the sexual forces of man and woman. The tree of life is in the midst of these four rivers of Eden. If the human being, with all of his vices and passions, could have eaten from the tree of life in Eden, then Nero still would be alive, and the great tyrants would not have left a single moment of light for humanity. Caligula and the 12 Caesars from Rome would still be alive, they would still be upon their thrones. Fortunately, Jehovah knew how to keep the way of the tree of life. So, he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden a cherubim, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis 3:24. Ignite your 9 mystic lamps, O Cella. Listen to me, a master abides in the bottom of your soul. He awaits in mystical lurking, waiting for the hour that he will be self-realized. Listen to me, beloved disciple, that master is your intimate, and you are the soul of that master. The intimate becomes master with the fruits of millenary experiences, through innumerable reincarnations. Do not forget, beloved disciple, that you are a soul, and that your physical body is your suit. Listen to me, beloved disciple, when your outfit is damaged, what do you do with it? You throw it away because you no longer need it, and you cannot deny this. Yet, if you wish to replace your outfit, then where do you go? You might answer me that you will go to the tailor's store, in order for the tailor to make another outfit for you. Therefore, beloved disciple, I have already told you that you are a soul, and that your body is your suit. Your suit of flesh was well made, in accordance to your own proportions. This suit of flesh was made by 2 laborers, that is to say, your father and your mother. When your present suit of flesh is damaged, what will you do with it? You will throw it from you, and if you want to replace it, then you have to search for a new pair of male and female laborers, in order for them to build for you another suit of flesh, well made and in accordance to your own proportions. You might ask me how? Well, how was your present suit of flesh which you use made? In the same way, the new tailors will make for you your new suit. So then, this should not be strange to you. When you undress yourself, taking off your fabric clothing, and you put on another garment, it is clear that you do not stop being Mr. or Ms. XX. Neither do you forget your business and your debts. So, whether wearing a suit of cotton or wearing another of wool, you will always pay your debts. The same happens when you, as a soul, redress yourself with a new suit of flesh. You have to pay your old debts, and you have to pay them, because there is no other way. Since these debts are your evil actions. Listen to me, beloved reader. There are millions of suits of flesh, which you have taken off since the beginning of the world. If you do not remember, indeed other people do remember. A day will come in which you will remember your millions of deaths, and births from the very constitution of the world. Do not forget that Adam is not one man, neither is Eve one woman. Indeed, Adam is all of the millions of men of Lemuria, and Eve is all of the millions of women of Lemuria. The souls that in this day and age you see wearing a suit of flesh and bones are the same. Souls of Lemuria, who in those times were wearing other suits of flesh and bones. In the dawn of life, the 4 thrones emanated from their own life source millions of human bodies in an embryonic state. These human bodies were developed through the ages. Now they are our marvelous physical bodies, which are made from the mud of the earth. All of this is explained by the Bible. Yet, in order to study the Bible, one needs to have studied occultism, because the Bible is a book of occultism, and cannot be read at face value, as when reading a newspaper. Therefore, the Bible is the book of the Gnostics, and only when one becomes a Gnostic can one understand it. The mystery of life and death. Listen, dear reader, Each time that you wear a new suit of flesh, you are a little less of a villain, a little less of an assassin, a little less envious. This is because one truly learns from life's club blows, and the soul is really perfected through suffering. When the wild colt is tamed with a whip, then the day for the soul to be united with its intimate arrives, and the soul is converted into an angel. This is performed through being born and through dying millions of times, yet, it is also very true that we can achieve the union with the intimate in just one very well-spent life. It is also very true that we can preserve our youth, and not die by means of the elixir of long life. Megner lived with his body of flesh and bones for 7 times 7 centuries. Zenoni also remained young for millions of years. The Count of Saint Germain presently lives in Tibet with the same body that he had during the 17th, 18th, and part of the 19th centuries in Europe. We, the Gnostics, laugh at death. We have the secret in order to mock the mute skull, and as we previously stated in the first chapter, we will make the inopportune guest, death, flee with the sword of Damocles. We feel ourselves omnipotent, and with a gesture of sovereign rebellion, we challenge science. Foolish doctors, ignorant biologists, arrogant physicists, where is your wisdom? Death sweeps away everyone, wealthy and poor, believers and unbelievers. All are defeated by death, except we, the Gnostics. We, the Gnostics, laugh at death, and we place it before our feet, because we are omnipotent. Ignite your 9 mystic lamps, O Lenu, disciple. Remember that each one of the 9 initiations of lesser mysteries has a musical note, and an instrument, which produces it. There are 3 conditions that are necessary in order to receive the elixir of long life: sexual magic, perfect sanctity, and to know how to consciously travel in the astral body. Many people can start by traveling with their own physical body within the astral plane, because this is easier. Later on, they can become practical in the use and control of the astral body. Some people are acquiring their sanctity little by little. The best way to put it into effect is to make an addition of all of our defects, then to terminate each one of them in a successive order, by dedicating 2 months to each defect. Whosoever wants to terminate various defects in one time is similar to the hunter who wants to hunt 10 hares at the same time. He does not succeed in hunting any one of them. Now, concerning sexual magic, there is the need to accustom the organism little by little to it, for there exist such brutal individuals who would not feel the slightest bit of pain if their own leg was cut during the sexual act. These are human beasts. In the beginning, the couple can practice standing on their feet. The husband will massage his wife from the coccyx upwards towards her neck, with his index, middle fingers, and his thumb, with the intention of awakening the kundalini of his wife. She, likewise, will do the same thing to her husband, with the intention of awakening his kundalini. The mind should be concentrated on the spinal medulla, and not in the sexual organs. The days for beginners of sexual magic will be Thursdays and Fridays at dawn. In the beginning, there should be no sexual connection. Later on, days, maybe weeks, the man will introduce his penis within the vagina and opportunely withdraw it, in order to avoid the seminal ejaculation. Man and woman must mutually kiss and caress during this practice, pronouncing the mantra I-A-O 7 or more times, taking an inhalation of air for each letter. When strong pain is felt in the coccyx, then it is a sign that the fire of Kundalini has awakened. This fire will rise along the canal of the spinal column, cannon by cannon, vertebra by vertebra, in accordance with our moral merits. The awakening of the Kundalini is celebrated in the Children's Hall with a great celebration. The decisive factor in the progress, development, and evolution of the Kundalini is ethics. There is the need for the disciple to be skillful in the astral, so that he can assist the preacher of the Holy Gnostic Church at dawn on Fridays and Sundays. The other days, the disciple can receive wisdom within the temple's hall of esoteric instruction. At the gate of the Holy Gnostic Church, there are some guardians who allow the entrance of the disciples based on the condition that their conduct was upright during the day. These guardians have certain scales with which they weigh the good and evil deeds that the disciples performed during the day. Also, there exists within the Gnostic Church a lens with which the colors of the disciple can be examined. When the disciple does not carry all of his complete colors, then he cannot bring the memories into his body. Many times, due to daily preoccupations, these colors remain within the physical body. An extremely fine nervous tissue, which is totally unknown by the men of science, exists in our brain. This tissue is the instrument in order for us to bring back our internal memories. Yet, when an injury is present in such a tissue, then the disciple cannot bring back his memories into his brain. Then, there is the need to ask the masters Hermes, Hippocrates, or Paracelsus for the healing of such a center. A letter must be written to the Temple of Alden, asking for the help of any of the three mentioned masters. Such a letter must firstly be saturated with the smoke of frankincense. Afterwards, the letter must be burned with fire, while pronouncing the mantras. Om Tat Sat Om. One must perform this action filled with faith, kneeling, praying to heaven, and begging to be heard. Certainly, the material part of the letter is burned, yet, the astral counterpart goes directly to the hands of the master to which the letter is meant for. Thus, the master reads the astral counterpart of the letter, and then proceeds to heal the disciple. The Temple of Alden is the temple of science. The internal bodies also get sick, and are also in need of the assistance of these doctors. These doctors are the masters of science, who are wealthy in wisdom. They heal the internal bodies of the initiates, and also of anyone who asks for help. One of the gravest inconveniences for practicing sexual magic is impotence. The excessive performance of the coitus brings, among other things, impotence. None of the remedies which were invented by allopathic doctors have given any cure for this. Yet, the daily practice of sexual magic heals impotence. Now we are going to give a formula in order for those who suffer that terrible sickness, impotence, to be healed, with the condition that there has not been any injury to the virile member. Very few are the human beings who have stopped to meditate upon the transcendental value of the plant called the aloe. I have seen the aloe plant hung on a wall without pure air, without water, light, and soil. Nonetheless, it remains filled with life, it multiplies its leaves and miraculously reproduces itself. What does it live on? What does it take for nourishment? This precisely is an inconvenience for the modern pseudo-botanists, since they only duplicate what others say. Very seldom does one of them have the insight to individually investigate within the marvelous laboratory of nature. The unique thing which the pharmacists can do with the aloe is create German liquor and pectorals. These are the only things which they make with their famous aloe gel. It is a great pectoral, yet they do not even remotely know about the transcendental importance of the aloe. The aloe nourishes itself with the ultrasensible rays of the sun, with the crystonic substance of the sun. The aloe gel is the crystallization of the astral light from the sun. Therefore, the gel is the semen of the sun. This is why a great similitude exists between the aloe gel and the human semen. Consequently, the aloe is a great panacea for the healing of impotence. The procedure is as follows. Put into a casserole, pan or pot 1 white panela, hard cane sugar commonly found in Colombia, so it can be melted by the fire. This casserole must not contain water. Once the panela is liquefied, you must add the gel of a complete aloe plant, then add 10 grams of iron. Stir this very well with a hand mill while on the fire. When everything is very well stirred, then take the casserole from the fire and bottle up this substance, adding a little bit of sodium benzoate so that it cannot ferment. Label it and take 1 spoonful of the remedy every hour. Impotence is cured with this marvelous formulae. We will give another marvelous formula for the healing of impotence in our next book, which is in preparation, entitled Occult Medicine and Practical Magic. Any woman who wants to awake her kundalini must practice sexual magic with her husband. She must also vocalize the mantra IAO and refrain from the orgasm. Thus, the woman must withdraw herself from her husband before the approaching of the spilling of her feminine semen. This is the way in which women can awake their kundalini in a positive way. The unique difference of the female with the male in relation to the kundalini is that the 2 ganglionic canals called Ida and Pingala are inverted. The order of these canals in the male is Ida at his right and Pingala at his left. Yet in the female it is Ida at her left and Pingala at her right. These 2 ganglionic canals resound with the note Fa of nature. Listen to me, beloved reader, when you feel that you are well prepared. Then ask the masters in the Holy Gnostic Church to submit you to the rigorous ordeals. If you wish special assistance, then invoke me, Samael Aun Weor. I will guide you through the 9 gates, which will give you the right to rise to the Golgotha of the high initiation, with the rough and heavy cross, which is delivered to you in the first initiation of lesser mysteries. Remember, good disciple, that the cross weighs the weight of your own karma. Do not allow yourself to fall, because the disciple who allows himself to fall has to suffer and fight very much in order to recuperate the loss. Listen to me, good disciple. The path is hard and filled with cobblestones and thorns. Poverty and infamy will put on their masks in order to hurt you in the middle of your journey. You will sweat blood, and your feet will also bleed in the middle of your journey because of the cobblestones on the path. The path of high initiation is the path of Golgotha. It is a path of tears and anguish. Light your candles in the silence of the night, and in that profound silence where you keep vigil, remember your eternal God and enter into this cavern. He awaits for you inside, deep inside of yourself, awaiting for the hour of his self-realization. Light your candle, O Cella. In the silence of the night, penetrate very deeply into the sacred city of the serpent. Here inside is where your God is waiting for you. So, light the fire in the night, O Lenu. Close your eyes, withdraw your mind from any type of mundane preoccupations, become a little sleepy, and try to talk with your internal God in mystery, through interior meditation. When through profound interior meditation you learn how to enter within your own cavern, then, O disciple, you will converse with your own intimate. Ignite your sacred fire in the profound night, where you keep your vigil, thus, you will leave the dense obscurity. Your God wants to talk to you within the burning bush of Oreb. Let your chant become sensitive to your 7 churches, O disciple, and do not forget that the verb is what opens the 7 doors of the 7 churches of your organism. Chant, O disciple, chant. Ephesus corresponds to the note do. Smyrna corresponds to the note re. Pergamus corresponds to the note mi. Thyatira corresponds to the note fa. Sardis corresponds to the note sol. Philadelphia corresponds to the note la. Laodicea corresponds to the musical note ti. Clairvoyance, middle brow, note ti. Occult ear, larynx, note sol. Intuition, heart, note fa. Telepathy, solar plexus, note mi. Memory of past lives, lungs, note la. Chanting these vowels for 1 hour daily awakens all of these occult powers. The blood rises upwards towards the head when we vocalize. The vowel I. The blood goes into the throat with the vowel E. With the O it goes into the heart. The blood goes into the intestines with the vowel U and into the lungs with the A. Within one of the rituals, which the master Huiracocha brought to Colombia, there is a mantric prayer, which is useful for sexual magic. This prayer must be pronounced in the moment when the husband and his priestess wife are practicing the connection of sexual magic. This prayer is as follows. Prayer. O Hadith, winged serpent of light, be thou the Gnostic secret of my being, the central point of my connection, my heart itself the sacred sphere, and the blue of the sky are mine. O Kakof Nakansa, pronounce 3 times. When the Kundalini lights the atoms of language, which are located within the seminal system, then the human being acquires the power of speaking in all of the languages of the world. The great illuminated ones of the Atlantean chain spoke all of the languages of the world. The Kundalini becomes a creator in the throat. The Magi can create a figure with his mind and materialize it by means of the creative verb of his Kundalini. This is how the angels create living things. When the human being is already united with his intimate upon reaching the high initiation, then he utters the divine golden verb, which the gods utter. This is how we elevate ourselves to the pleroma of eternal happiness, and we convert ourselves into creative gods, by means of the verb. Therefore, a book whose theme is about the verb, word, yet does not teach sexual magic is simply flippant. To take the word out from the mysteries of sex is the breaking point of madness, since sex is the very base of the word. Thus, one cannot utter the divine golden verb, language, without the awakening of the Kundalini, and it is only awakened by practicing sexual magic. Whosoever is united with the intimate becomes omnipotent and omniscient. He knows how to command and to obey. He never becomes arrogant, because he has learned to be simple and humble within the cosmos. The Master's sight penetrates within all of the spheres of nature. As a sovereign of the infinite, he unleashes the tempests and calms the hurricanes. He makes the earth tremble, the lightning serves him as a scepter, and the fire as a carpet for his feet. We will acquire the elixir of long life by practicing sexual magic. Thus, we will become omnipotent. Yet, in order to achieve omnipotence, it is first necessary to learn how to obey the white hierarchy. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they might have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. Revelation 22:13-14. The Song of Songs. I feel within my innermost parts a tormenting fire. It is the delectable wine of love. I am the rose of Sharon, and the lily of the valleys. I am the delectable perfume of passion. I live within the cup of the crowned poets. I am the chant of the bacchantes. I am the love of the starry heavens. I am the song of songs. The honey of thy lips agitates my innermost parts. Thus I feel that I love thee. Thou art the mountain of myrrh, and the hill of frankincense. Thou art the fire of the arcanum. Thou art the erotic alp, and the delectable smile, where love has become undressed. Now, happy with the immortal wine, let us ignite a bonfire, and let us chant the Walkyrias, with a triumphant chant of flames and poetry. Let the liquor come, let the light and music come. Let the couples dance upon the soft carpet. Let the rose of Sharon sparkle within the cups, and let the fire devour the shadows. Let joy, fancy, and poetry come. Let us dance happily in the arms of love. Never mind the sayings. Let us enjoy together in the nuptial chamber, within spikenards and myrrhs. And let us chant our triumphal hymn of light and poetry. By Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 17. Beelzebub and his revolution. Everything in life is a matter of customs. A fornicator is an individual who has intensely accustomed his genital organs to copulate. Yet, if the same individual changes his custom of copulation to the custom of no copulation, then he transforms himself into a chaste person. We have as an example the astonishing case of Mary Magdalene, who was a famous prostitute. Mary Magdalene became the famous Saint Mary Magdalene, the repented prostitute. Mary Magdalene became the chaste disciple of Christ. Paul of Tarsus, the furious persecutor of Gnostics, received the sacred initiation after the event, which occurred to him on his way to Damascus. He left the custom of persecuting the Christians, and he adopted the Gnostic customs. Therefore, he became a Gnostic Christian prophet. An evil one can become a saint if he changes his customs of evil for the customs of a saint. After this preamble, let us enter into the interesting theme of our present chapter. In our present terrestrial period, Beelzebub, the ancient prince of demons, reached a degree of perversity that is impossible to describe with words. When any magician wished to call Beelzebub in the astral plane, he had to arm himself with very terrific courage in order to confront the most monstrous beast, which the innumerable cycles of historic evolution have known. The magician was pronouncing the sinister mantras of tenebrous evocations that are written as follows. Anti-Arera Ara. Then, the name of Beelzebub was called 3 times. A breeze of death was cooling the atmosphere of the evocator, and the prince of demons was answering with a terrifying roar, which seemed to emerge from all of the caverns of the earth. Beelzebub was concurring to the call of such a courageous magician. Beelzebub's steps were like the trot of an infernal colt, and his presence, 1,000 times more terrible, 1,000 times more horrible than death itself. Woe unto the bold one who dared to call the prince of demons without being properly prepared. Woe unto such an intrepid one because he died under the claws of the horrible beast. Yet, the very well-disciplined magician, firm as a warrior, was extending his right hand towards the prince of demons, and conjuring him with the following words. In the name of Jupiter, father of all gods, I conjure you, te vigos cosilim. Then, the monster was remaining still. His presence was like a gigantic, long-haired gorilla. He was embracing his disciples or friends with his long tail while talking with them. His eyes were like a bull, his nose like a horse, his mouth like a mule, his feet and hands were enormous and horrible, and his body, as we have said, was hairy like the body of a gorilla. He was wearing upon his head a beretta, upon his shoulders was the black cape of the Prince of Demons, and a cord with 7 knots was around his waist. All of these garments were indicating that he was a Prince of Demons, a black magician of the 13th Black Initiation. When he was signing a pact with the black magicians, he was signing the following upon the document: Bel tengo mental lapitra, y ella end of cedra veo genizer leds. Beelzebub knew how to momentarily abandon the astral plane, in order to enter into the physical plane. This is how he was becoming visible and tangible for his daring evocators in the physical plane. He was making rich those who were signing pacts with him. Consequently, the soul of that evocator was remaining a slave of Beelzebub. He was giving them money, yet the evocator had to resolve to follow Beelzebub in a determined moment, in a determined day, hour and minute. This was because Beelzebub was demanding the evocator's own life, and the soul of his most beloved son. Beelzebub himself was disincarnating the evocator, in order to take him and place him under his service. I know of a rich landholder who has signed a pact with another demon, who is not Beelzebub. Every year a laborer mysteriously disappears from his farm. One little girl watched her mother precisely in the very moment in which she was disappearing, snatched by the mysterious hand of someone who was not seen. Consequently, this child remained an orphan. The black magicians can take their victims into the astral plane, even with their bodies of flesh and bones, in order to place them under their service within that plane. Many will say that the former statement is impossible, that the author of this book is getting peskier than a fly. Yet, I recommend to those people to study the initiatic novel of occultism by Crumheller, Huaracoca, so they can learn about the history of the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail was in the physical plane, yet now it is within the astral plane. Also in the astral plane is the Temple of the Holy Grail, which was physical in the past, and also part of the mountain of Montserrat in Cataluna, Spain. This is what is called Jinn state. This chalice is filled with the blood of the Redeemer of the world, which Joseph of Arimathea collected when he was at the foot of the cross in Golgotha. We read in Crumheller's book how Commander Montero entered with his physical body into the authentic Rosicrucian Temple of Chapultepec, Mexico. This temple is in a Jinn state, so Commander Montero entered into this temple with his body in a Jinn state. Dr. Rudolf Steiner, the great German doctor, said, "A physical body can enter into the internal worlds without losing its physical characteristics." Mario Rosso de Luna made beautiful studies about the Jinn lands. Don Mario Rosso de Luna died disappointed with the Theosophical Society. The Rosicross is one of 7 initiatic sanctuaries, which are located in the astral plane. Yet, all of the Rosicrucian schools, which are presently known in this physical world, are false ever since such schools fell into the hands of Jav. The natives of America knew about the Jinn states in depth. Therefore, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they hid their most sacred temples within the astral plane. As a result, the Mayan mysteries were saved from the Spaniards' profanation. The Sanctuary of Mayan Mysteries is one of the 7 great occult sanctuaries, which now remain within the astral plane. When a physical body is active within the astral plane, it remains subjected to the laws of that plane, without losing its physiological characteristics. I know about a fellow who robbed 2 gold bars from the profound cave of the Pregoneros, state of Merida, Venezuela. When the man in question went out of this cave, he felt that these 2 gold bars were moving in his hands, and simultaneously, a storm was unleashed. He then saw that his 2 gold bars had transformed into 2 horrible snakes. This man then threw them out of his hands and flew away in terror. What also can occur is that a disincarnated person can momentarily abandon the astral plane and penetrate into the physical plane. Such an individual becomes invisible for those persons from the astral plane, yet, he remains tangible for the people of this physical world. In such a case, the disincarnated person remains momentarily subjected to the laws which command the physical plane, without his astral body losing its own Characteristics. These cases are counted in thousands within the apparition archives of psychic societies. These are the apparitions of deceased persons, which the spiritists talk of. Nonetheless, they could never know how to explain them. Superficially, they say that these are materialization phenomena, and they fill them with millions of theories. They ignore that the soul can enter into the distinct departments of the kingdom. What is necessary is to know how to do it, as the magicians do. Therefore, the magician does not need spiritist mediums in order to perform these phenomena of practical magic. When magic is explained as it really is, then what occurs is that it seems to make no sense to fanatical people. They prefer to follow their world of illusions. I know the case of an evocator who called Beelzebub with the clavicle, clue, of Solomon, which is as follows. Agen tetragram vation estimilia matenis spares retrogrammaton orgran irion. Erglian exist ion ariona omera brasin moim messias solar, Emmanuel Sabaoth Adonai. I praise thee and I invoke thee. When the evocator saw Beelzebub in the middle of the room, he became filled with infinite terror, and did not dare make any pact with him, for he became tongue-tied. Beelzebub always had his cavern filled with weapons and seals in order to mark the astral bodies of his disciples. I, Samael Aun Weor, was always observing Beelzebub in the astral plane. I tried to gain his affection, because what kept calling my attention was the overwhelming fact that he was irradiating love towards his friends. He was a very rare and unique case among his kind, because I had never heard of a demon whose aura was irradiating a blue light, which is that of love. Certainly, he was always hurling terrible threats upon me. Yet, I always defeated him with my mantras, and thus I was accompanying him into his caverns within the astral plane. I reached even to the point of taking part in his feasts, pretending to be a black magician, and even his comrade. This was in order to more closely study this personage. My intentions in the long run were to perform the greatest task in the cosmos, which was to take Beelzebub out from the Black Lodge and transform him into a disciple of the White Lodge. My disciples were considering this task to be something truly impossible. Beelzebub did not stop threatening me. Nevertheless, in spite of everything, I did not dismay. Finally, there was a curious event, which did assure my intentions. One night I, along with a cella, invoked Beelzebub in the astral plane. Once he concurred to our call, we invited him to dinner. He accepted our invitation, and we went into a restaurant of the astral plane. As we already explained, the astral body also eats elements, which are related to its organism. Thus, the astral world is almost similar to our own physical world. So, I asked food for Beelzebub, while I contented myself to drink a glass of water. When Beelzebub sat at the table, he took the beretta off from his head, and began to eat in a gentlemanlike manner. It was intriguing to see that type of gorilla eating at the table like a great lord. Some cellists who were in that place addressed me and told me that I was being disrespectful in bringing a demon into that place. As it was expected, they were looking at him with disgust, and soon they began to vacate the place. Notwithstanding, I answered them, "This is also a man, and he deserves to be respected." Then, Beelzebub took the floor, and in a profoundly sad tone he said, "Everybody despises me. The only one who does not despise me is my friend Samael Aun Weor." This was the astral experience that did encourage me to continue with my longed-for purpose, which was to take Beelzebub out from the Black Lodge, and to make him a disciple of the White Fraternity. Some people would see the fact that the astral body can eat and drink as something impossible, because their unsound mysticism is always telling them that the astral body is something vague, a vaporous fluid, an intangible and non-material body. Considering they are only theorists, it does not occur to them to verify it. Let such ladies and gentlemen study Vivekananda's books, in order for them to be informed that the internal bodies, astral body, etc., are also material. This is why we, the Gnostics, say that nothing can exist, not even God, without the help of matter. So, the astral body is material, and it is a dense organism, such as the physical body. The fact that matter in its last synthesis is reduced to energy does not deny its existence once in that state. If we cannot see it with our sense of sight, it is because it belongs to the fourth dimension. Our physical eyes will not serve for seeing the astral plane until we make them suitable for this purpose, or until we place ourselves into the astral plane with our physical body. Thus, the astral organism is as dense as the physical organism, yet it belongs to another department of the kingdom. The astral body is much more sensitive than the physical body. The astral organism is like a duplicate of the physical organism. As the physical body has to be nourished with food related to its nature, so does the astral body. The occultist utilizes the astral body for his studies and for his great investigations, because such a body is advantageously arranged over the physical body. Time and distance do not exist for the astral body, and what one learns through it remains immediately recorded within the consciousness of the being forever. Therefore, my dear reader, do not take the fact that I was having dinner with Beelzebub in the astral plane as something strange. Many times I had asked for the attention of Beelzebub's intimate, in order for him to do something for his soul, but the answer of his intimate, spirit, was, I cannot, he does not obey me. I have fought a lot, yet it is impossible. Beelzebub, as all black magicians from the school of Sodom, considers that the spirit is inferior and the soul is superior. This is because they say that the soul is more psychic. So, Beelzebub, as well as the disciples from the school of Sodom, were convinced that the guardian of the threshold was their real being. Precisely, this is why Beelzebub did not listen to his intimate. Beelzebub ignored that he was in evil. He was furiously attacking the white magicians, and believing them to be perverse. He was feeling himself to be a saint and good, and considered the white magicians to be demons. He was ignoring our Gnostic principle, which states, one has a soul, and one is a spirit. The Testament of Learning says, before the false dawn came over this earth, those who survived the hurricane and the storm gave praise to the innermost, and to them appeared the heralds of the dawn. The intimate or innermost is our internal sun. Thus, the soul who removes itself from its intimate falls into the abyss. The spirit is our real being. The soul who removes itself from its own spirit is disintegrated. This is the second death. As a result of the words that Beelzebub uttered in the middle of that dinner, I, filled with enthusiasm, performed another experiment. I invoked him anew within the astral plane. Once Beelzebub attended my call, I politely invited him to have some drinks with me. Beelzebub happily and joyfully accepted my invitation. While Beelzebub and I were walking in the astral plane, I was changing Beelzebub's own vibration. Finally, I succeeded, and I removed him out of the astral plane and took him into the most divine plane of consciousness of the cosmos. This most divine plane of the cosmos is named the Pass Not Ring in the first volume of the Secret Doctrine by the Master Blavatsky. If we consider the cosmos as a great tree with its roots in the absolute, then these roots will be the Pass Not Ring, because no one can pass that plane, not even the most great gods of the cosmos can pass beyond that ring. Beelzebub was really overwhelmed before the tremendous luminosity of that ineffable region. Its beauty and happiness is indescribable. Yet, he felt terror because for 4 eternities Beelzebub was living within the darkness of the tenebrous caverns. When seeing the light he was feeling fear, and so with a hoarse voice he uttered, "This is unceasingly terrifying," I responded. "More terrifying is the darkness in which you live." Then, walking through this plane we passed in front of a house. "Can I enter?" he asked me, and I answered him affirmatively. Immediately we entered and stayed inside for a while. Really, everything was new for Beelzebub. He was feeling discontent, because he was accustomed to living among the veiled prophets, and the tremendous luminosity of that plane was horrifyingly bothering him. After this interval of light, I took him again to the other extreme, into the terrible darkness of the Avicii, hell, of our earth, where one does not see anything but pieces of souls in the state of disintegration. There you find souls of prostitutes, who by means of too much copulation became totally separated from their intimate. Now, while lying down upon their filthy beds, they are disintegrating themselves like candles, melting with the fire of their passion. We found their souls of demons who were nothing else but pieces. "Here I feel a little bit better," said Beelzebub to me. I answered him, "You have to accustom yourself to the light." He then stated, "It is very hard to do so because I have been living within the darkness for a very long time." When showing him the pieces of souls, I warned him, "Here is where you will end up if you continue with your evilness." Then after, I took him again into his astral plane. Despite the fact that I was not content with the former ordeal, I did not dismay. I understood that he had the guardian of the threshold within his internal bodies. As a logical fact, in spite of the promising hopes that I was observing in Beelzebub, that guardian, which is so respected by the black magicians, was totally enslaving him. Nevertheless, Beelzebub did not get furious against the light only annoyed him. He was suffering greatly in the astral plane, because all the spiritualists were turning up their nose at him, and he was very discouraged with his people. There was always the same despot behind the altar commanding his temple. He was always around the same vices, and those vices had already made of him a gorilla, a filthy beast. I, Samael Aun Weor, understood all of this. Therefore, I did not dismay, especially when he was trying to feel affection for me, and was considering me his best friend. Thus, I performed a third experiment. This one was really the decisive one. I took Beelzebub into the pass-not ring for a second time. While there, I invoked for him his best and very ancient friends from the epoch of Saturn. These friends of his are now in this present time luminous lords of the mind, lords of the light. Filled with pain, they hugged Beelzebub. One of them said to him, "I never believed to reach the point of seeing you in this state." Then Beelzebub answered, "You see how far I went." In that plane, Beelzebub seemed to be something like a gorilla from the African jungle within an elegant hail of Paris. Nevertheless, when Beelzebub recognized his most beloved friends, he was appalled within the depth of his soul, and totally comprehended how he went astray. This was Beelzebub, the simpatico and handsome man of Arcadia. If it was not for the taverns, he would not have known the horrifying black magician who misguided him. Then I asked permission to the masters of that luminous plane to leave Beelzebub in that luminous region for some time. The masters joyfully agreed with my petition, with the condition that I constantly visit him. We then together made a chain of love around Beelzebub, inundating him with our love and filling him with our best atoms, saturating him with light and splendor. I was constantly visiting Beelzebub. He was always sad, since he was the only gorilla within that plane of gods. All of the beings of that region were looking at him with curiosity, and his ancient friends of the Saturnine period were advising and helping him. So Beelzebub was accustoming himself little by little to the light, and he was feeling remorse in the bottom of his soul for the lost time. He felt shame when in front of his best friends, and he longed for personal improvement. Therefore, we helped him by temporarily uniting him with his internal God, with his own intimate, and a supreme effort was made by his Glorian in order to call his soul to the union with his intimate. When reaching this part of our book, it will be rare for the occultists to hear about the Glorian. In reality, the Glorian is nothing else but the ray from where the intimate, spirit, emanated. Thus, the Glorian is substance, yet it is not spirit, neither matter. The Glorian is the great breath that is profoundly unknowable to itself. It is a breath from the Absolute, one of the many breaths from the Great Breath. The Glorian is the atmic thread of the Hindus. It is the Absolute within us, our own individual ray, the whole of our real being made in glory. The soul aspires for the union with his intimate, and the intimate aspires for the union with his Glorian. The diocese of our Glorian is the Turk chair of our organism. This Turk chair is formed by the cervical vertebrae of our spinal column. Here is where the Glorian has its silver atoms. When Beelzebub became united with his Glorian, the white light of the Glorian was shining with all of its splendor in that part of Beelzebub's astral organism. This momentary fusion of Beelzebub with his intimate took away from him that horrifying appearance of a gorilla. Dressed with the vestures of his intimate, he assumed the shape of that simpatico, young man of Arcadia. We must not forget that the atoms of the Glorian are of silver, and that the Holy Grail is of silver, and not of gold as some Rosicrucians suppose. Hence, the chalice, which the initiates of the god Sirius carry over the hood of their forehead, is of silver. Any chela who visits the transcended church of the star Sirius will convince himself of my affirmation. A great interior revolution was taking place within Beelzebub. So, one night, the most quiet and the most silent night, I made some experiments of theurgy, which were really definitive. I projected for Beelzebub upon the cosmic scenario some scenes of the Akashic records. The primeval epochs from the Saturnine period were appearing, epochs in which Beelzebub still was a good and simple man, when he still did not have vices, when he still was not a friend of brothels or taverns. All of those scenes were moving themselves in a successive order. Beelzebub was silently contemplating them. Then after, the taverns, the little parties, the social nights, and the brothels with their orgies appeared. Beelzebub, filled with a terrible internal emotion, was contemplating those very ancient scenes, and he was remembering his errors. He was before the primeval causes, which had conduced him towards his present state. A true revolution of Beelzebub was in activity. Beelzebub was revolutionizing against hatred, against selfishness, against vices, against fornication, against anger, against crime, etc., etc. Suddenly, something dreadful and horrifying emerged from within that scene. It was a being who was an abominable demon, dressed in a black tunic, and who was wearing in his ears 2 rings. The eyes of such a demon were protruding outwardly, and an atmosphere of profound darkness was enveloping him. Beelzebub remained astonished when contemplating him, since he was his very ancient master. He was that horrifying black magician, who with his marvelous clues, was always making him triumphant in the vice of gambling. He was that horrifying demon, who leads him towards the first black initiation. This demon was the one who enslaved Beelzebub to the guardian of the threshold in that very ancient tenebrous temple, where Beelzebub passed the first ritual. It is the same ritual, which in this day and age the black magicians pass through. This sinister personage approached Beelzebub smiling in order to greet him. Beelzebub, as when one is attracted by a hypnotic spell, wanted to approach him in order to return the greetings. Yet he stopped, and a gesture of rebellion emerged from within the bottom of his soul. Heroically he exclaimed, "No, I do not greet you. I do not want anything from you, since you are responsible for me being in this state." Then, the sinister personage, with a very hoarse voice, which seemed to emerge from within the bottom of the centuries and from within the tenebrous caverns, answered, "Is this the payment which you give for my services? Have you already forgotten my sacrifices? Have you already forgotten the teachings that I gave you? You are allowing yourself to be guided on the bad path." Yet, filled with energy, Beelzebub answered, "I do not want to listen to you, since you are responsible for my being in this state. So, I believe I did pay you for the granted favors." Then, I conjured this sinister personage in order for him to withdraw. Hence, the black magician withdrew with his profound darkness. He seemed to sink himself into the abyss. This was an ordeal for Beelzebub, and he emerged successful in this ordeal. Beelzebub revolutionized himself against black magic. A gesture of rebellion was bursting within the bottom of his soul. After having projected these Akashic records in the atmosphere for the sake of Beelzebub, we, the masters and my disciples, performed chains of love together, in order to irradiate light to Beelzebub. Afterwards, I projected in the form of pictures the fate, which was awaiting for him, if he would still follow the black path. Pictures were appearing of Beelzebub happy in the taverns, and delivering himself to all the vices of the earth. Finally, the setting of the cosmic night was appearing, and all the seas overflowed over the earth. Everything was in ruins and ice. There, thrown away on a shore, was a piece of the head, and the chest and arms of the one who had been Beelzebub in the past. Once the former picture concluded, I then told him, "Lo and behold the doom, which is awaiting for you, if you keep following the black path." Afterwards, I projected the pictures of the fate, which was awaiting for him, if he would follow the path of white magic. In these pictures Beelzebub was shown already united with his intimate, dressed in the tunic of mastery with its long cape of a hierophant, and with his scepter of power. A luminous garden appeared, and Beelzebub was treading upon this garden, as an omnipotent and heavenly god. I told him, "This is the providence which awaits for you, if you follow the path of white magic. Thus, resolve yourself now. Do you follow white magic, or do you continue on the black path?" Beelzebub's firm answer was, "I stay with white magic." Then Beelzebub fell down on his knees weeping, as when a child weeps. Raising his eyes towards heaven, he closed his hands together over his chest, and among tears and sobs, he prayed to heaven. He was a repented demon. His horns were shining upon his forehead, as if they already wanted to vanish with the light. The major brethren were hugging him with tears in their eyes. All of them were rejoicing amongst themselves, while a triumphal and delectable march, with its ineffable melodies, played in the starry heavens of Urania. I say unto you, that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth, more than over 99 just persons, which need no repentance. Luke 15 verse 7. Then I kneeled and prostrated myself before the most powerful hierarch of the cosmos, who is called by the Tibetans the Mother of Mercy, or the melodious voice Eo. He is the only begotten, the great universal verb of life, whose body is all of the sounds, which are played in the infinite. His beauty is ineffable. He bears a crown with 3 points, and the Elohim carries his very long cape. They carry the long train of his cape. So I begged the only begotten to have Beelzebub close to him, in order for him to adjust Beelzebub's kundalini. Beelzebub's kundalini was flowing downwards, forming the tail, kundartiguator, of the demon. Now, the only begotten's duty was to raise Beelzebub's kundalini upwards, towards his head, in order to convert him into an angel. The Master, the only begotten, accepted my supplication, and within that plane of diamantine light, he placed Beelzebub within a resplendent garden, and gave him a cosmic book for him to study. He instructed him in the path of light, and filled him with atoms of wisdom. Later on, I made Beelzebub revive the whole of his life throughout all of the 4 great cosmic periods, and I showed him the beautiful fate, which was awaiting for him if he was going to follow the luminous path. When Beelzebub saw himself already converted into a hierarch of the future, he asked me, "Would this be soon?" I answered him affirmatively. Afterwards, when he finished reviving all of these scenes, he then arrived before the only Son, only begotten, saying, "I come with my soul transformed." The Master then continued helping him, and his kundalini arose. Thus, the tail, kundartiguator, of the demon disappeared from him. Nonetheless, the horns were still over his forehead, because these horns belonged to the guardian of the threshold, and he was closely fused with the guardian of the threshold. This internal beast was a terrible obstacle for his evolution. It was necessary to cast this beast out from him, in order to liberate him from this internal monster, which held him in bondage for innumerable ages. That internal monster had taken possession of his will, of his thought, of his consciousness, of everything. Therefore, the necessity of expelling him out from his own being, in order to perform a fast internal progress, was peremptory. This then was the moment when I took him into the astral plane, in order to submit him to the first initiatic ordeal, through which anyone who wants to reach the initiation has to irremediably pass through. This is the ordeal of the guardian of the threshold. In this ordeal, when we invoke this monster, he comes out from within ourselves, and he threateningly thrusts himself against us. Beelzebub had to invoke his own guardian many times. Finally, a horrifying breeze blew everywhere, and then, in a dreadful and threatening way, the specter of the threshold appeared. That creature was a giant, about 3 meters in stature, and his body had 2 meters of thickness. He had the appearance of a monstrous gorilla with a flat and round face, 2 horns and protruding eyes. Beelzebub had fortified this monster throughout the ages. Now, Beelzebub did not have any other choice but to fight him. Therefore, Beelzebub courageously thrust himself over the monster, and subsequently defeated him. This was the monster, which gave Beelzebub that horrifying appearance of gorilla. This was the beast of the threshold. Hence, a dry noise resounded within space, which is different than the metallic sound produced in similar cases with our present disciples. This is because Beelzebub is from another world period. Afterwards, Beelzebub was welcomed within the children's hall with a great festivity and delectable music, and so he remained converted into a disciple of the major brethren. The masters gave him a symbolic cup of silver. After Beelzebub passed through this first ordeal, I then took him again to the only begotten, in order for the only begotten to keep helping him. The horns disappeared from the forehead of Beelzebub, because these horns belonged to his internal beast, to the guardian of threshold, which is called by the Rosicrucians from the school of Sodom the guardian of their chamber, and also the guardian of their sanctum. The monstrous figure of the gorilla also disappeared from Beelzebub, because that figure was not his own, but the figure of the guardian of the threshold, which is called by the Rosicrucians from the school of Sodom the guardian of their consciousness. Beelzebub beautified himself. Nevertheless, he now had to accomplish that saying of the Master, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Matthew 22 verse 21, Beelzebub had to return to the black magicians all the articles which he had from them. The biretta, the 7-knotted cord, and the cape of the prince of demons. Also, he had to erase his name from the book where it was written. When reaching this part of our present chapter, we have to give some explanations about this matter, because many readers would think it strange that we talk about books within the astral world, and it is because people are accustomed to think that the astral world is a vague, fluid, vaporous, intangible, immaterial, etc. world. We, the Gnostics, are essentially realistic, and we have reached the conclusion that nothing can exist, not even God, without the help of matter, even though what is matter is something absolutely unknown to the so-called materialistic schools. Such schools are nothing else but a theoretical cage of parrots, because in reality these know-it-alls of materialism truly do not know anything else but the most gross states of matter. For example, what do they know about occult chemistry, the anatomy, and ultrabiology of the internal bodies of the human being? Materialistic skepticism is the result of a cerebral dementia. This has already been confirmed by the psychiatric doctors of Paris when they were analyzing the brain of an existentialist. In reality, within each normal human being, there exists a true, natural mystic who is without any type of aberration. This is because the materialistic, as well as the spiritualistic theories are equally filled with aberrations and fantasies. Therefore, we, the Gnostics, are not spiritualists, neither materialists, but we are realists. We deeply know about the infinite manifestations of matter and the spirit, and we know that the fundamental base of the being is not spirit neither matter. The glorian is a substance, which gives its substance to itself, yet it is not spirit or matter. Therefore, when we affirm that Beelzebub had to erase his name from the book of a temple, we speak with much authority, as when we say that we have to erase a name from a physical material book. If material objects exist in this physical plane, likewise material solid objects exist within the astral region, because the astral plane is as material as the physical plane. Moreover, we can visit the astral plane any time we want by penetrating within it with our physical body of flesh and bones, dressed and prepared as if we are going on the street for a walk. Books of astral matter exist within every temple of black magic. The names of its affiliates are written in these books. Whenever a black magician withdraws from a temple of black magic, he must always erase his name from the book where it is written. Also, he has to return all of the articles to their owners, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Matthew 22 verse 21. So, after the ordeal of the guardian of the threshold, Beelzebub presented himself to his tenebrous temple in order to erase his name from the book where it was written. It was an enormous, gigantic temple of black magic. The great hierarch of the temple was behind the altar. When he saw Beelzebub, impatiently and irritably he exclaimed, "You finally remember to come? Since you are the one who directs this temple, why do you delay so much in coming?" Then Beelzebub answered with an energetic tone, "I do not belong to this temple anymore. I am now following the path of white magic." Afterwards, he took the biretta from his head and the cord from his waist and thrust them over the altar while saying, "There, I leave these things to you. I do not need them any more, since now I am of the White Lodge." Then he added, "Give me the book so I can erase my name from it." Then the tenebrous priest answered in a despotic way, "Look for the book yourself. I will not give myself that duty." Thus Beelzebub looked for the book, and then after, he erased his name, and departed from the temple with a firm and triumphal step. Subsequently, we directed ourselves to a certain tenebrous cavern, where he had to deliver the cape of the Prince of Demons. When Beelzebub entered into the black cavern, he spoke the following, "I come to deliver this cape that does not belong to me any more, because I am now a disciple of the White Lodge." And so he thrust the cape towards them. Beelzebub departed from that cavern, while the black magicians from that cavern were insulting him. Once out of that cavern, we directed ourselves to Beelzebub's own cavern. Here, innumerable weapons and seals of black magic were shown. Beelzebub burnt all of these with the salamanders of fire. This is how, my beloved reader, the former prince of demons Beelzebub was liberated from black magic. Beelzebub continued abiding within the light of the pass-not ring, and the only Son, begotten, kept teaching him. Some days after, the ordeal of the great guardian of the threshold of the world was presented to him. This is the second ordeal, which every disciple must pass through. Beelzebub courageously confronted the second guardian. Another party was celebrated in another temple, and another symbolic cup of silver was delivered to him. When the second ordeal is passed, then another ordeal comes in order to burn with fire the residue, which remains within the disciple. Beelzebub entered within the hail of fire, and he courageously sustained himself within the flames. This is the third ordeal, and Beelzebub passed it very well. The fire burnt all of the larvae of his astral body, thus, he remained clean. Later on, he passed through the 4 ordeals and proved that he was capable, even capable to kiss the whip of the executioner. These ordeals are the ordeal of earth, fire, water, and air. Beelzebub courageously passed through these 4 ordeals. Then he received the cape of Chela, disciple, of the White Lodge, and he dressed himself with a purple tunic. Beelzebub became a disciple of the White Lodge, and he totally sanctified himself. For such a motive, the great brethren celebrated with a grand cosmic party. The divine rabbi of Galilee received him with open arms, and the divine rabbi congratulated me, Samael Aun Weor, because of my triumph. This event remains written in the book of the 24 elders, and the cosmos, the whole of it, has been shaken. This is the greatest event of cosmic evolution, because I have heard about fallen angels, yet I have never heard of a repented demon. So Beelzebub delivered himself to healing sick people, and to taking them by night in their astral bodies into the temple of Alden for their healing. He delivered himself to goodness, to righteousness, and to justice. He changed his demonic customs for the customs of a saint, and hence he became a saint. Therefore, the main link, which was Beelzebub, was lost and panic sprouted within the Black Lodge. The black magicians were unfolding ancient parchments, and were astonished when reading the innumerable degrees which Beelzebub had, and how now in a manner of speaking he had betrayed them. Some of them were commenting on this case by saying, "Now we have nobody else but our chief Jav, the boss. If he abandons us, then we are lost." Afterwards, when Beelzebub passed through the 4 ordeals of earth, fire, water, and air, he visited Jav, his former chief, and he said to him, "I come to say farewell to you, because now I am no longer dependent on your government, for now I am disciple of the White Lodge." Jav then furiously answered, "Traitor! Miserable one! Renegade! You allowed yourself to be convinced by Samael Aun Weor. Yet, he does not have your degrees, neither Menaeus well. Be aware that you are walking on the bad path." Then Beelzebub answered him in an energetic tone, "The one who is walking on the bad path is you. I follow Samael Aun Weor. I did not see the light, but since Samael has shown it to me, I will not leave this light any more, and I follow Samael Aun Weor in the same way that all of his disciples follow him." Jav then said to him, "Damned, damned, damned. My damnation will follow you eternally." Yet Beelzebub answered him with a smile, "Your damnation does not enter me, because I am protected by the White Lodge." After Beelzebub had spoken, Jav then turned himself against me, saying, "You are the one to whom I have to attack, because you are responsible for all of this." Subsequently, he attacked me with all of his sinister occult power, yet I easily conjured him, and I defeated him. Beelzebub kept healing the sick. However, the instant in which he had to ask for a physical body, in order to climb up on the path of the initiation, approached with necessity. So Beelzebub asked for a physical body. His petition was accepted, and he inscribed himself in the 9th karmic office. This is how he entered into our human evolution. The initiate Garga Kichin generously offered his cooperation in order for Beelzebub to take physical body within his home, yet this was completely impossible, due to health reasons of his wife. She could not endure the tremendous vibration of Beelzebub. However, the major brethren had foreseen everything very well. The Chela Beelzebub incarnated himself in France in a feminine body. Now Beelzebub is a beautiful girl in France, who will overwhelm the world because of her sanctity, power, and wisdom. Her parents have a young and beautiful marriage in which only love and comprehension reigns, because both are initiates. They are laborers, yet they enjoy a simple and beautiful life. Beelzebub was born with the body of a girl, because the feminine body is indispensable for the development of feelings, tenderness, and love. Now Beelzebub, already with physical body, can rapidly pass the 9 initiations of lesser mysteries, and finally he will unite himself with his intimate. Thus, he will convert himself into a master of major mysteries from the white fraternity. From the great sinners, the great virtuous are born. The sapience of sin. Wisdom is elaborated with the sapience of sin. And the vertigo of the absolute. O defeated Magdala! Thy withered lips due to too many kisses. Also know how to love. Therefore, I love thee. Fallen woman. I die for thee. No matter what they say. I like dancing and I love. Alas! Woman, do not leave me. For I die for thee. Alas! Woman, do not leave me. For I only love thee. The forbidden fruit makes us gods. Thy delectable words of love, and thy grave oaths, are like the fire of the roses, and like those delectable moments, which no one knows of. The most great angels were always devils. From great Bacchanahas, they enjoyed the lips of love. They sung the song of songs. Red roses are better than white, because they have the sapience of sin, and the vertigo of the absolute, and because they have wept a lot. A sweet Nazarene has forgiven them. Temptation is the mother of sin, and the pain of sin is the sapience. Christ loved she who had wept much, and said to her, Woman, I forgive thee, for thou hast loved much. The most divine gods are those who have been more human. The most divine gods are those who were devils. Chant, O Beelzebub, chant thy song. Chant, O Beelzebub, a chant of love. Woman, thou art a rose of passion. Thou hast 1,000 delectable names, yet thy true name is love. I want to fasten laurels to thy temples. I want to kiss thy lips with love. I want to tell thee rare things. I want to tell thee intimate things. I want to tell thee everything. Within the perfumed room of mahogany. I want to tell thee everything in starry nights. Thou art the star of dawn. Thou art the light of Obad. Thy breasts pour honey and venom. And the liquor of the female is a liquor of mandrake. It is a summit, an immensity, a fire. It is the ardent and adored flame, through which one enters into heaven. By Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 18. The Millennium. When the main link from the Black Lodge was broken, then the revolution of Beelzebub extended itself over the whole face of the earth. Concurrently, the millennium began exactly in the year 1950. The foundations of the world were being shaken, and other black magicians followed the example of Beelzebub. Astaroth, an inseparable friend of Beelzebub, and Holy Mary, the comrade of Mariella the great black magician, also followed the example of Beelzebub. Thus, the revolution of Beelzebub is marching on. Everywhere the oppressed are rising against the oppressors, and everywhere are wars and rumors of wars. What is already agonizingly old is holding on to life, while what is new wants to be born and live. The revolution of Beelzebub is in march. The age of Aquarius is reigning, and the storm of exclusivity has been unleashed with all of its fury. Parties are struggling against other parties, religions against religions, nations thrust themselves to war, and each hand is risen against other hands. Everything which is obsolete, everything which is old fights to survive, while the new wants to impose itself. It is the struggle of two epochs, one which is dying and the other which is being born. We have entered into the millennium. The human evolution has failed. Almost all of the human beings who presently live upon the face of the earth have already received the mark of the beast upon their foreheads. They are demons. The billions of souls who are presently incarnated are demon souls, perverse souls. Only a handful of souls were saved. The astral plane was filled with trillions of demons who were fighting terribly in order to win the Great War, in order to establish their worldly government. This plan is inscribed within the protocols of Zion. Jav and his Black Lodge were already at the point of total triumph upon the earth. Everything was marching in accordance with their plans. The tempest was in its peak. The age of Aquarius was approaching, and there was not even a ray of hope within the darkness of hatred. The Second World War had just passed, and millions of disincarnated souls within the different theaters of war were still in our astral environment, thirsty for blood. This is when the Venerable White Lodge delivered into my hands the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in order for the first verse of the 20th chapter of the Apocalypse, Revelation, to be accomplished, which states, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand." Revelation 20 verse 1. I received commands from the Lords of Karma in order to lock Jav and all of the black magicians within the abyss. This task was certainly overwhelming for me, yet I felt omnipotent, because after submitting me to the tremendous ordeals of the initiation, the Venerable Masters delivered to me the sword of justice and a white horse. Thus, the greatest honor granted to a human being, which is to judge and to initiate the age of Aquarius, was given to me. A band was placed on my thigh which states in symbolic letters, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This was done in order to fulfill the 16th verse from the 19th chapter, which states, "And he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." Revelation 19 verse 16. I carry this band on my thigh in order to represent that the power of the human being is within the sex. Consequently, this is why the mission of teaching the tremendous secrets of sex for the first time to humanity was granted to me. This is why the innermost, the intimate, or the real being of the one who writes this book carries that band on his thigh. This is the way in which my particular mission is symbolized. When the night in which I had to obey the command of seizing Jav arrived, I marched with all of my disciples in a rigorous military formation. We began hailing Jav, which is how we surrounded him and seized him by surprise. He was convinced that we were going to entertain him, therefore, he did not escape from our hands. Afterwards, we locked him within the Avicii of the Black Moon. 7 atomic doors of iron usher towards that plane of consciousness. The sword with which Michael defeated Luzbel, and all of the tenebrous legions of ancient cosmic periods remains hanging on the great external door. The black magicians become horrified when they see that sword. Jav has a very grave karma, since he was the secret perpetrator of the crucifixion of Christ, and he is also directly responsible for the failure of human evolution on the earth. He has to irremediably pay these old debts, because no one can mock the law with impunity. The Lords of Karma delivered to me a heavy cross covered with spikes in order to crucifix Jav on it, with his head downwards and his feet upwards. Since he crucified the Christ, now Karma has entered into action. This was in order to fulfill the 2nd and 3rd verses from the 20th chapter of the Apocalypse, Revelation, which state, "And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, Jav, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season." Revelation 20 verses 2 and 3. 1,000 years signifies various thousands of years. In other words, Jav and his people will remain within the abyss during the whole luminous cycle of Aquarius. Yet, in the cycle of Capricorn, the last opportunity for their repentance on our earth will be granted to them. The words dragon, demon and Satan are individual and generic words, because these words symbolize Jav and the billions of demon souls which I, Samael Aun Weor, am locking into the abyss. When locating all the evil of the world, I was aware that the evil within Asia had its principal focus in China. All of the evil in the Western world had its principal focus in Rome. I remembered that when one wants to kill a snake, one must aim for the snake's head. Thus, I started capturing and taking into the abyss all of the black hierarchs from other cosmic periods, along with their trillions of demons. I saw Luzbel with his red tunic and red turban. He was carrying a very ancient parchment rolled up in his tail. I saw Ahriman, the creator of gross materialism. Ahriman wears a red tunic and red cap. I saw Lucifuge Rofakale, creator of money. I saw Orhuarpa, the founder of the mysteries of the tenebrous sun in Atlantis. I saw Baal, the contrary pole of the luminous angel Adonai. The king Baal wears a crown. He was teaching his disciples from a great book, within a cavern from the desert. I saw the soldiers of Jav, who assassinated the Christ. I disguised myself as an elder black magician in order to convince Luzbel that his boss Jav was calling him with all of his legions. Thus I danced before them, and, little by little, I lead them into the abyss. This is how Lucifer and his legions, Ahriman and his legions, Lucifuge and his legions, Orhuarpa and his legions, Baal and his legions, Walpegar and his legions, were brought down. I performed marvels before these chiefs of legions. I danced, sung, played kettle drums, etc. To that end, I performed everything which was at my reach in order to clean the atmosphere of the world. I utilized all of my very ancient knowledge in order to lock up all of those billions of demons who already had the world within their claws. I disguised myself in thousands of ways in order to take these black magicians into the abyss. All of these black magicians with their people were presenting me with great combats within the astral light, yet I defeated them while mounted on a white horse, and with the sword of justice in my mouth. This is how verses 15 and 19 from the 19th chapter of the Apocalypse were accomplished, which state, "And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God." Revelation 19 verse 15. "And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and their armies, gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, and against his army." Revelation 19:19. The real being or innermost of the one who writes this book performed all of these marvels, and he performed them well. The one who writes this book is only the humble and rough personality of the master Samael Aun Weor. This master is my real being, that is to say, my intimate, my innermost, my monad. I cleaned China, and I also cleaned the Western world. The black magicians from China and from the Western world were as numerous as the sand of the sea. All of the black magicians from China were depending upon the orders of the Black Lodge called the Black Dragon. All of the black magicians from the Western world were depending upon a certain black magician from Rome. Hence, millions of souls from the fatalities of the Second World War fell into the abyss. The Lords of Karma established a tribunal within the Avicii. Power was granted to me in order to judge these black magicians, and also to execute their punishment. This is how verse 11 from the 19th chapter of the Apocalypse was fulfilled. This verse states, "And I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war." Revelation 19 verse 11. We could fill enormous volumes if we would tell in detail all of the scenes and all of the things which I performed in order to clean the earth from all evilness. If we would not have done all of this, it would have been impossible to initiate the age of Aquarius. I, Samael Aun Weor, am the avatar of Aquarius. I am the initiator of the new age. I am faithfully accomplishing my mission. I profoundly thank the masters for the honor which they granted to me. The masters placed over my head many brilliant crowns, and my vesture seemed to be dipped in blood while in mid-battle. This is how verses 12 and 13 of the 19th chapter of the Apocalypse were accomplished. They state, "His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew, but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God." Revelation 19 verses 12 to 13. The name of my real being is hidden within the name Word of God, because the Bible is highly symbolic. God is represented with the monosyllable Ahim or Aom. Word or verb is within Weor, which is pronounced Veor, so the W is the V sound. This W together with the remaining three letters, ERO, of verb and word form Weor. Thus, we have the name Ahim Weor, on Weor, Aum word, God word, hidden within the phrase word of God. My name was purposely hidden within the phrase word of God, because I have accomplished this mission with the lost word, with the verb of God, with the signed sentence that is within the luminous and spermatic fiat of the first instant, with the hiss of the fohat. This is how after all of this the astral plane remained clean of black magicians. The lost word of the Black Lodge, Mathrem, which appears within the monograph of 9th degree from the School of Sodom, protected them throughout millions of years within the veil of obscurity. Yet now in the millennium, it will not protect them anymore. The gods judged the great whore, humanity, with the number 6. Thus they considered her unworthy. The sentence from the gods was, to the abyss, to the abyss, to the abyss. The astral plane remained clean as millions of human souls fell into the abyss. Yet, billions of demons remained within the physical plane with bodies of flesh and bones. This is when the gods had to judge the great whore, humanity, in order to cast her into the abyss. The Third World War is already inevitable. People will die by the millions like the sand from the sea. This has to happen in order for verses 17 and 18 from the 19th chapter of the Apocalypse to be fulfilled. These verses state, "And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bound, both small and great." Revelation 19 verses 17 to 18. Human beings will die by the millions, like the sand of the sea. The Colossus from the north will pay its karma. There will be war between the east and the west for the good of this humanity, thus said Jehovah of hosts. The demonic souls from the dead of the Third World War will sink into the abyss. From the year 1950 henceforth, the souls who will receive physical bodies will be only those who will have the chance to be properly prepared to live in the age of Aquarius. Eventually, our planet will become almost barren, yet millions of inhabitants from other planets will come in order to illuminate the age of Aquarius. We spoke previously about UFOs in our first edition of the book The Perfect Matrimony. We explained in that book that they are flying ships, and that the instructors of Aquarius will come in them. The demon souls of the human beings from our Earth are establishing themselves within the Avicii, abyss, of the Black Moon. They have the same customs, which they had when they were here. Thus, they have formed the same environment, such as they had on our Earth. The billions of demon souls obey the hierarchs from the Black Lodge. The fortune-telling tables, the famous magical figures of Furbu over the squared turtle, the plates and tables for sacrifices, the circles of Chinsreg are seen everywhere in this new black habitat. All of those black magicians have their Kundardigwaiter awakened, Kundalini awakened in the negative way. Therefore, they incessantly copulate in order to practice their black sexual magic, with the goal of strengthening their Kundalini in the negative way. We previously stated in this book that there are two types of sexual magic. One is a sexual magic that creates life, and the other which creates death. The first one is white magic, and the second is black magic. At first, these black magicians made thousands of experiments in order to escape from the Avicii, yet, all of their experiments failed. They believed in the beginning that the Avicii was a cave or something of the sort. Now they are finally realizing that the Avicii is a plane from nature, which is similar to the physical environment of the Earth. This is because they made millions of experiments, they consulted their books, yet they did not have any success, for all of their experiments failed. They will remain there until the age of Capricorn, then afterwards, the last opportunity will be granted to them to repent of their evilness. The fire transforms everything, because everything came out from the fire, and everything returns into the fire. The redemption of the human being is in the fire. Fohat transforms everything, which is, everything which has been and everything which will be. We have defeated death, thus, we are immortal. The Sword of Damocles 3. Rises against the mute skull. The world is within the fire of alchemy, hence, all refuse is falling into the abyss. I have finished this book in the middle of the tempest. The cannons are roaring, the earth trembles, the terrible rumble of the thunder is heard, and within the frightful blowing of the hurricane, majestic voices and terrible words are heard. The earth is in flames and the fohat is incessantly hissing. Thus, within the terrible hissing of the fohat, the sentence of the gods of fire is heard. To the abyss! To the abyss! To the abyss! Samael Aun Weor. Hymn for the New Era. By the great avatar of Aquarius. To be sung in chorus. I. Let us break the chains. Tyranny has already fallen. Om, om, om. Life is in festivity. Let us break the chains. Om, om, om. 2. Good Jesus, come, come, come. He does not want slaves. Jav has already fallen. Luzbel has already fallen. 3. Let us break the chains. Tyranny has already fallen. Om, om, om. Life is in festivity. Let us break the chains. 4. In the infinite space, within divine lightning, the gods immortal sang with heavenly chanting. V. The black night has already passed, with its painful scaffolds. Now let us chant to the heroes of the night, a chant of love. 6. Let us break the chains. Tyranny has already fallen. Om, om, om. Life is in festivity. Let us break the chains. Om, om, om. 6. Good Jesus, come, come, come. He does not want slaves. Jav has already fallen. Luzbel has already fallen. Now we are free. Now we are wise. Luzbel has already fallen. 8. Let us break the chains. Tyranny has already fallen. Om, om, om. Life is in festivity. Let us break the chains. Om, om, om. Inri, inri, inri. The end.